Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborn. Today, we are talking about bubbles, more specifically what we are calling champagne stunt doubles. And we'll get to that in a moment. But first, a couple of housekeeping reminders. If you purchase this trio from Wine.com ahead of time, wonderful. Please go ahead and get those bottles open. You can pour them into some glassware now if you want to start sipping ahead of time. We'll probably get into the tasting notes along with our winery representatives in about 10 or 15 minutes. So you can wait until then, or again, go ahead and start pouring them and sipping along. If you don't have the wines, totally fine. This trio is still available on Wine.com. And of course, this video will live on our Wine.com YouTube channel. What are we tasting? The sparkling wine we are tasting today comes from 3 different continents, which is kind of cool. We have the Schramsberg Blanc de Blanc from California, Ferrari Brut from Italy, and the Jansz Rosé from the island of Tasmania. So we have some incredible guests here to talk about each wine, but first, to help guide us through this discussion, I'd like to introduce renowned author, respected wine expert and educator, and also a good friend, Mark Oldman.
Well, hello, Gwendolyn.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good. Let me make sure I've got everything unmuted and cleared up and ready to go. Start my video.
Let's
there
do
we
this.
go.
There you are.
Right.
Hello.
Hello, you.
Hello. So I'm super excited about this tasting. As I mentioned to you, of those of you at home, if you'd like to sip along as we discuss the wines before we get to the official tasting, please feel free. So, I want you to tell us a little bit about this phrase that we've termed this tasting, which is champagne stunt doubles. And this was a chapter in one of your books, one of your 3 books. Are we 3 or 4? 3 books.
Indeed, 3, and this was the first book, but thank you for remembering.
I think that's what I remember. It's called champagne stunt doubles. So tell us the idea behind this. What do you mean when you use that term?
Well, listen, I love Dom Perignon, but I don't always want to pay that much for champagne unless someone else is paying. And that's a subject. That's another subject. But I call these champagne stunt doubles or bubbly stunt doubles, BSDs. They look like the kind of marquee wine. Let's say it would look like a Dom Perignon, but like a Hollywood stunt double for Halle Berry or any kind of major celebrity. So they look similar, but they're a lot less expensive, and they're always ready for action, meaning they kind of pair well with everything and every setting, and we can get into pairing later.
Yeah, absolutely. But these, the ones we've chosen today are kind of like the highest of the high-end
Exactly.
stunt doubles, if you will, because they're all made with the same traditional grape varieties. They're made in this traditional method that's used in champagne, right?
Exactly. These are the stunt doubles such that if you were at an old time Hollywood restaurant and the stunt double was on the left and the real McCoy was on the right, you might not know which is which. Reminds me, the Australian Open is going on right now. And it reminds me, I was once at the US Open and I saw what I thought was Rod Stewart in the stands. Everyone was taking a picture of him. And it turns out it wasn't Rod Stewart. It was his famous double, but he kind of basked in the fact that everybody thought it was him. And, no one's the wiser. People were still happy to see almost Rod Stewart.
That's right. And also I do want to talk a little bit. These wines too, though, they bring such a great sense of place from where they're from, and the craft that goes into producing them kind of makes them their own little world of bubbles, if you will.
So true. And I'm interested to hear from the winemakers how they think that terroir expresses itself through these bubblies. But I'm already, I cheated and I opened it early. Mm-hmm. And I'm already getting these kind of unique factors you're talking about.
Well, let's bring our wonderful guests in. From Schramsberg, we have Hugh Davies. From Ferrari, we have Matteo Lunelli, and then from Jansz, we have Jen Doyle. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks to you. Good evening.
Yes, like I said, we're in 3 continents, so I think like one of you is morning, one's afternoon, and one is the middle of the night. So, so thanks for being here to share your stories. We're going to start with the Schramsberg, Blanc de Blanc. Hugh, welcome, and again, thank you so much for being here in your gorgeous cellar, which you will, I'm sure, talk a little bit about, because I'd love for you to start with a little bit of the origin and history of Schramsberg.
Well, Gwendolyn, thank you for having me. Mark, good to be with you and with the other panelists. I've got to admit, this is the first time I've done a virtual tasting with someone who's live from Australia and someone who's live from Italy. But yeah, we're in Napa Valley. My parents arrived here on this spot, this dot there on the map in 1965. They would revive the old Schramsberg winery, as it was known in this region at a time when there were about 20 active wineries in Napa Valley. The original winery goes back to the 1860s. Actually, during the middle of the Civil War here in the United States, there were a few Germans that started planting wine grapes in this part of California. So there was a period of about 50 years where still wines were made here. And then we had a terrible period of prohibition in the United States. And then my parents revived the winery in 1965. And we've been pursuing with 115%, we'll say, attention to detail, our craft of making bottle fermented sparkling wines here in this pocket of California's coast.
And you have multiple vineyards throughout the coast there, and so a lot of your wines are labeled North Coast because you're specifically looking for what?
Yeah, so as we've evolved, we started small too. We produced about 200 cases in 1965, frankly, of this very wine. But as we've evolved, we have come to appreciate, perhaps somewhat like the folks in Champagne, the diversity of a number of different pockets. So in Champagne, they might talk about the Côte de Blanc or the Montagne de Reims, the Valley de la Marne. Here in our pocket of California, it's the Carneros, it's the Sonoma Coast. It's the Anderson Valley, and we even do a little bit to maybe our lobe is the Marin County pocket, where perhaps 5 to 10% of our fruit comes. We're very fortunate to be in very close proximity to the Pacific Ocean, which is very deep and very cold. This part of California is not a part where you really swim in the ocean at all. It's cold, and it brings cold air into the various pockets of the coast. Throughout the year, our winters are a little more moderate because we're next to the ocean. But similarly, the summers are a little more moderate, particularly in really close proximity to the ocean itself. And so as we've evolved, we've gotten better and better with some of these vineyards where there were no vineyards, frankly, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s. Some of the vineyards we work with are really young, but exciting. Cheers.
Yeah, and this is your parents were focusing on sparkling wine even.
Yeah, they were the first producers in California to do Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, bottle fermented traditional method sparkling wine. And so there was a niche. They made 200 cases that first year. Not many people noticed, right? But 55 years later, we've come a little ways. I guess 56 technically. And so there are a few other French producers, French champagne houses have come to California, some Spanish producers as well. The wine industry is pretty international, as you know, and so there are plenty of players in the California industry that are from overseas.
Yeah, but it's good to be a pioneer, right?
So we're family operation, represent the second generation. I did go to UC Davis, got my master's degree in winemaking, worked in France. I actually worked at Moet in '95 and worked at a place called Petaluma, Australia. I didn't make it to Tasmania, not on my first visit to Australia, but on my second one I will. I've never worked in Italy, but I've been, but yeah, I've had a chance to work at a few other wineries, and then I've been back here since 1996.
Fantastic. So, and Mark, I know you are a big fan of Schramsberg. So what kind of, as a producer, stands out for you with this?
Well, first of all, and I'm not just saying this to make you feel good, but it's kind of known that Schramsberg is one of the Grand Cru American sparkling wine producers. This is just known as, it has a sort of halo to it. And I did not buy this book for this tasting. I actually bought it around Christmas. This is Wine and the White House, A History, a really good book, big book. good for wine geeks. It actually was written by someone from the White House Historical Society. But if you look at the index, it's not just one president who liked Schramsberg and served Schramsberg. It's all of them. In fact, I was revisiting this book today and I was thinking to myself, presidents come and go, but Schramsberg is here to stay in the White House. So that's a kind of a testament to its high quality and the fact that it's been high quality since the days of Nixon.
Yeah, and speaking of the Nixon, we did have somebody request the Nixon story. So tell us how your wine and President Nixon met.
So my parents came from Southern California to Northern California all those years ago. As some of you may know, Nixon was from Southern California, and so later was Ronald Reagan. But there were, kind of loosely through a couple of people, there was a connection, I guess, between these Southern Californians. And anyhow, long story short, at one point, my parents got a call from the State Department. This is in February, actually January, I should say, then of 1972. And there was an order of 13 cases of Blanc de Blanc. At the time, we would sell 1,000 cases a year. So the 13 case order was a very good order. The fact that it came from the State Department was interesting, so much so that my dad loaded the truck. They drove the 13 cases to the Travis Air Force Base, which is outside of Sacramento, and dropped it off. Didn't know exactly what the reason was for. 3 weeks later, they would find out after it had already happened. And Barbara Walters would explain to anybody who was listening to the Today Show that day that a little known sparkling wine from California, the Schramsberg Blanc de Blanc, had been served. And boom, that was good, right? It was a good hit, but it was also a key moment, right? It was the first time an American president had ever even been to China as a sitting president. Vietnamese War was going on, two leaders trying to work out their opposing views. And how cool was it that our wine actually made it to Beijing? So we're here to help solve world problems in case anybody is
I honestly do think that sparkling wine might be the solution to the majority of world problems if we really gave it a chance. But let's get into tasting this wine, Hugh. And like you said, the Blanc de Blanc, aka Blanc de Blanc, is white of white. So we're working with 100% Chardonnay here. So I would love to have you walk us through tasting this, maybe kind of highlighting just some of how this reflects the North Coast, the vineyards you choose, the winemaking.
Yeah, so the grapes that we're working with, we've talked about this range of what we'll call cool coastal climate locations. The one feature about that's key is that the acidity is really high, very vibrant, and it's interesting. We're a little further south on the globe than say the Champagne district, but our proximity to the ocean allows for that cool air to hang on these vineyards, and we end up sometimes being fairly late in the season. In these cooler pockets with really vibrant tart acidity. So you taste that in this wine. You taste the crisp entry. You taste this really long palate. There's 9 grams of acidity in the wine for those counting, which is like on the very high side. But there's a beautiful essence of fruit, a little lemon lime, maybe some just ripening pineapple that kisses in there. We age it for just over 2 years in contact with yeast inside the bottle. A little barrel fermentation as well. Just adds some dimension to otherwise what would be really strident, crisp, tart Chardonnay. It's fun to make this in California. Interesting, maybe a better word. Many people think of California Chardonnay as being much more round and buttery and barrely and and it's like, hey, no, this is a California Chardonnay. It just happens to be really, really lean and crisp. So very palate cleansing. We've done well with this style.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I like the way it evolves. Like it starts with a lot of what you say, but then things keep changing, and I love that.
It's a style that ages really well too. I would say, today we're selling the 2017 vintage. It's always vintage dated. Each vintage gives us a different signature. But it's exciting to taste these wines when they're 10 years old, 20 years old, and we're definitely advocates for that. The shot there on the screen is kind of one of the long views in our network of caves. We have about, I I guess 3 kilometers of caves if you line them all out, and maybe 35,000 square feet, depending on how you like to count them. So some were dug with picks and shovels back in the 1800s. Here are a group of guys stacking rosé that's just been freshly bottled. And I think something behind me here, you've got a lot of 2018 vintage wine, but we have many vintages. Blanc de Blanc, the 18 and 19 are here. The 20 will soon be bottled, but with some of our other styles, we have as many as 10 different vintages still waiting to emerge from the cellars, right?
Oh, fantastic. Looking forward to that. Mark, what are your thoughts on tasting this wine?
This is a serious bubbly. I get this beautiful California rendered fruit of citrus, of Meyer lemons. And then you get something you don't often see in American sparkling wine. And that's this kind of yeasty, baked bread, Pepperidge Farm factory aroma that's so beguiling. And you see in some of the finest champagnes. I have to say, I owe Schramsberg my obsession with sabering. 20 years ago, I was visiting Schramsberg. So when things open up, when we can all go to wine country, it's an amazing visit. And I was just on a regular tour, and one of the, hospitality manager mentioned sabering. He actually did a little bit. And then I'm like, can you teach me? And that was the problem. Suddenly he inoculated me with the need to saber. And so it all began at Schramsberg.
20 years ago, you said, so that's good.
Yeah. So just anybody, if you're walking outside of Mark's apartment in New York City, be careful. There could be flying corks coming out the window.
A lot of
pretty much what we're saying.
It's New York,
It's New York, but who knows what's coming from the sky. But this is a beautiful wine. I can recognize that aging potential. For me, it was like lemon curd. You were talking about the Meyer lemon. It's that richness with the lemon, but just there were a lot of things going on. It's just a stunning example of wine from there. So thank you for sharing and for teaching Mark how to savor. All right, so we are heading over to Italy. Matteo, welcome. Thank you so much for also joining us today.
Thanks to you for inviting. It's a pleasure.
So late at night, early in the morning. So we are here in Trento, Italy. But I first want to talk a little bit about the winery's history, because we have this wine, it's Ferrari. To be clear, there's no relation to the car, in case anybody was wondering. But can you tell us a little bit about the family Ferrari and the Lunelli family and how that came to produce sparkling wine in Trento?
Yes, Ferrari Winery was founded in 1902 in the city of Trento, and it was founded by a man called Giulio Ferrari. So the name Ferrari comes from the name of our founder, who was the first who understood basically the vocation of the region of Trentino and the mountain viticulture of Trentino to create bottle fermented sparkling wine. Basically, Giulio Ferrari studied enology in Italy, then he moved to Montpellier in France, where he specialized. And he had the opportunity to spend some time in Champagne afterwards. He did something like a stage in Champagne when he was very young. And so coming back to Trentino, his dream was to create an amazing sparkling wine with the méthode champenoise that he learned in France. In Italy, we call it Metodo Classico. And so this is how he started. At that time, in 1902, he was the first one in Trento to do that. And he planted Chardonnay on the hillside of the Alps. Basically, he's also in Italy very important because he's the first one who spread Chardonnay into Italy. Nowadays, you can find Chardonnay from Trentino down to Sicily, but he has been the first one to bring it to our country. And as I said, he understood that in this land that you see in the picture, in these mountain vineyards, there is the perfect condition to grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay for an elegant, fine, and sparkling wine. He managed the winery for 50 years, and then after the Second World War, since he had no children, he had to find somebody who could continue his vision, and between many pretenders that wanted to buy the winery, he chose my grandfather as his successor. So in 1952 starts the history of Ferrari Winery under the leadership of my family. And now I'm part of the third generation of the family in the winery. So since then, the winery has grown a lot, but remaining faithful to the principle of the founder. And nowadays, we are proud to say that we are a little bit the toast of Italy par excellence. So as much as Schramsberg certainly is a reference brand for high-end sparkling wine in the United States, we are the traditional luxury sparkling wine in Italy. Funny enough, as much as Schramsberg has served at the White House, we are proud to say that we have been served for many years at the Quirinale, which is the house of the President of the Italian Republic.
Yeah. And the Emmys. Don't forget the Emmys.
And the Emmys, which is actually where we met with Mark.
Yes.
That was fun, but we are proud. We have been served at the Governor Ball at the Emmy Awards for 5 years. It's an amazing experience. Unfortunately, this year there was no ball because of COVID. But every year it has been outstanding because this event gets together 4,000 people, sit down in an incredible dinner, and we are glad to serve a Ferrari as as the sparkling to start everything up.
It was beautiful, and I do recognize that you like you were saying back in the early 1900s, that was unheard of to really plant these kinds of grapes in these kind of mountains in Italy, and similar to what he was saying of just this people coming in and saying, let's make a sparkling wine. But before that happened, I see that similarity. So Mark, what kind of stands out to you about Trentino and sparkling wine there?
Sure. Well, I just have to pick up on the Emmys thing for a second. I remember being at the governor. I get to go to the Emmys sometimes, and I'm very fortunate. And I remember being at the governor's ball and seeing Meryl Streep look really happy. And, this is where the celebrities go after they win or after they don't win. But she had a statue in front of her. And I thought to myself, well, she just must be so happy she won another Emmy. And then I was thinking to myself, she was probably so happy because she was drinking Ferrari. This is good stuff. What I love about this, and so we're drinking the Brut, and I love the Brut, and I love turning on even wine snob friends who they might have heard of Prosecco. And as Matteo said, Prosecco or suggested, Prosecco is made in a different way. This is made in the traditional champagne-like way. And if you are kind of know your wine, you know Franciacorta, but you don't know Trento Doc, which is this alpine region that Ferrari is from. So what I love about it is even people who think they know it all with wine, you can introduce to them this incredibly high quality bubbly. And I did this once to a friend of mine only drank Burgundy and Prestige Cuvée champagne. And I served Matteo some of your Giulio Ferrari, the Founder's Reserve, which is your very high level. And he was blown away. And he was the biggest snob. It was either champagne or nothing for him. And he was like, oh my God, the depth of the flavors here are really, really good. So this is one of the things I really love about Ferrari, that it's this kind of, in a way, it's not a secret because Meryl Streep is drinking it, but in another way, a lot of people don't know about its region of Trentino. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I think so. And that in the mountains, and this is also 100% Chardonnay. And we just had the Blanc de Blanc also from Schramsberg. And I think this really highlights the diversity of sparkling wine and really showcases that sense of place, which we were talking about earlier, because these two wines are quite different and they're both amazing, but they're both 100% one grape, correct? Matteo, there's 100% Chardonnay, yeah?
As you said, every great wine is an expression of its territory, of its terroir. And, we want to be an expression of the mountain viticulture of Trentino. I say mountain, and I mention mountain many times, because this is what creates the style of Ferrari. On the slope of the Trentino mountains, we have a very unique climate, because during the day, the vineyards are kissed by the sun. We have a Mediterranean climate, so it's warm. But during the night, the cold air comes down from the top of the mountain. And this shifting temperature between day and nights is what enables this wine to have this finesse, this elegance, and drinkability. And this is what makes this wine unique. You know, I like the idea of stunt doubles as much as, you know, when Mark said we are ready for action. But on the other side, we don't want to be a copy of champagne. You know, as much as Schramsbergs or the wines in Tasmania, they are an expression of this unique terroir and unique territory. You know, having a mountain, having the mountains around us and cultivating the mountains gives us anyway a very unique style. And Chardonnay is a beautiful grape variety, and our Ferrari Brut is, as you said, Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay, because a Chardonnay expresses itself in a different way and really interpret the terroir. And in Trentino, I think it emphasized this crispiness and this. I like to say that in our Trento Doc, Ferrari Trento Doc, you have a little bit of the snow and the freshness on the mountain, and at the same time you have the warm and the maturity and the aromatic flavor given by this sun, Mediterranean sun, all together. And so it's you.
I know it's 1 a.m., but I want you to tell us. I know it's very late for you, but walk us through the tasting and give us some words and aromas.
You know, in my opinion, in every great bottle fermented sparkling wine, it's all about the balance and the harmony between the flavors of the grape variety. Here it's the Chardonnay with these golden apple flavors, these citrus notes, and together with the notes coming from the long aging on the lees. This wine, which is the Ferrari Brut, ages on the lees for at least 2 years. And so the long aging on the lees gives this note of bread crust, almond, patisserie, and the harmony, you know, and when these two group of flavors work together well, they create harmony, they create a great sparkling where, you know, one sip should call the other. You know, I also think that one of the characteristics of Trento Doc is that, you know, it's a very drinkable wine that where one sip called the other. And so it's easy to drink, elegant and fine at the same time, but also brings you a nice complexity.
Yeah. Mark, any thoughts on that? The wine.
Apples.
Keep drinking it.
Oh yeah. Just leave me alone and keep drinking this. It's green apples. It's like biting into a lovely green apple. This zesty acidity, and then you've got lemon, some almonds. It's exceptionally smooth, and then it's a long finish like the Schramsberg, but it's European in that it's savory. It seems like it's so good with food. You just want to have antipasto and lovely food. This would samurai sword through any rich dish. Last night, for the first time here in New York City, first time in a long time, my wife and I had another couple over, and it was all very social distanced, and we abided by all the laws and regulations. But we made crusty chicken pot pie. And there's something about that crust of the pie, the baked bread, the almost nuttiness of the pie, and the creaminess of the innards. This would be such a good match because it would cut right through it and clean your palate beautifully. So great match with like a rich chicken pot pie. But I mean, Ferrari, it's just something that I like to, you know, it's like, I've got the bubbly for you. Check this out. And again, even the jaded wine connoisseurs are sometimes surprised by it. So it's happy.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Mark.
So thank you, Matteo. It's beautiful. Also, I still remember being able to visit a little over 2 years ago, and it was one of the most magical times. I so remember like mountain viticulture. Okay, mountain viticulture. It was just amazing, but it was a beautiful place. So if you ever get the chance to visit, when we can visit again, it's fantastic. Speaking of visiting, we're moving down to Tasmania, the island in Australia. Jen Doyle, thank you so much for being here with us. It's wonderful to have you.
Pleasure.
Here we are, you know, hanging out, trying to get to Antarctica, but not quite there yet. No, just kidding. So we are in another cool climate, which could be kind of our maintaining theme here today. But Jansz, how long? Oh, so beautiful. Yeah, and I know that Mark was like, I know Mark's he was supposed to go visit right before COVID hit, and didn't get to, but you will one day. So Jen, how long has Jansz been producing sparkling wine in Tasmania?
So I guess we're relatively young for the Tasmanian modern wine industry. There were certainly wines made by the first settlers, but the industry here probably started in the mid-70s. And Jansz was established in 1986, and that was a joint venture between the Tasmanian vineyard Schramsberg and the champagne house Louis Roederer. So there was that, I guess, expectation and potential for something that could be something like champagne from this very southern state of Australia. So the most southern state of Australia. We're actually an island, which is about 240 kilometres off mainland Australia. So Tasmania sits between 41 and 43 degrees latitude south. The island state itself is about 68,500 kilometres square, which is roughly a little bit over double the size of Vancouver Island.
Okay.
So there's a picture of the Jansz estate.
Yeah, beautiful. So what about this Tasmanian climate makes it ideal for traditional sparkling wine grapes?
So I guess firstly it is quite, but it is also an island state and therefore very much influenced by the roaring 40s, the winds, and that is what keeps the temperatures so cool. It moderates the temperatures in the vineyards. Most of the vineyards are around the coastal areas of the state. Further inland, it gets too frosty, so we mostly plant around the coast.
I'm sorry, did you call it the Roaring 40s?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is that? Mark, do you know this too? I don't know. That caught me. What is that?
Yeah.
I love it. If you want to put on like some flapper costumes or something.
It's the wind system that passes through the southern part of the globe, and the winds just get stronger and stronger as you get further south toward Antarctica. I guess it's a naval.
It's 40th because of like where you are on the parallel, or because of the temperature?
It's the latitude, so 40 degrees.
Where you are on the parallel. Okay.
Yes.
Just curious. Now we've all learned something. So I think Mark's even writing it down. It's very exciting.
I'm not only writing it, imagine being at a tasting and being like,
the Roaring 40s.
I get a bit of the Roaring 40s there. I mean, you'll make the room just be amazed. This is good stuff. You need to know this.
No, this is great. So Mark, what stands out to you a little bit about Tasmanian wine? I know you were scheduled to go and visit for the first time. I know you're married to an Aussie, so you get, a little bit of Aussie culture often.
Exactly.
But what's
my Aussie wife?
Wine?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I love Straya, not Australia, but it's 2 syllables. Straya. That's how to sound like an insider, or a wannabe sounding like an insider. But so my wife was already in Straya visiting her family, and the idea is we would meet in Tasmania. So I had my ticket a year ago, right when COVID was rearing its head, like around March 15th. It was New York, LA, Sydney, Adelaide, down to beautiful Tasmania. And I'm dying. I've been obsessed with this southerly island, and to Americans, we think the South is hotter, but of course, this is the Southern hemisphere. So it's, as Jen was saying, it's cooler down there, so they can grow champagne grapes like Pinot Noir and more sensitive grapes like that. And a lot of wines are doing really well from Tasmania, but they say the sparkling wine is it's a pièce de résistance, so to speak. It's top dog. And basically, every time I've been in Australia, I've had Jansz, and I'm like, this bubbly is incredible. It deserves to be an American. Then suddenly it got to America. And it's been another one of my secrets I tell people about. It's just, and one thing to know about it, and Jen might have mentioned this, is you call it a Tassie Sparkler. And in fact, I think, what do you call yourself? Method Tazamois?
So it's our take on the traditional method, but I think it's more encompassing of our Tasmanian terroir.
And I don't want to jump the gun, but speaking of the terroir, I get a lovely mineral quality to this. And the reason why I was on my way to Tasmania is I need to learn more. But Jen, would you say that that's a highlight or that's a trademark of your bubbly?
Indeed it is. And I guess like the other wines that we've tasted also, this is a blend of different vineyards, and the fruit expression from the north of the state versus the south is quite different. So the north is cool and wet or humid, and the south is cool and dry. And so that dryness in the south tends to give more of the texture and the minerality that you're speaking of, whereas the northern fruit is often that more red fruits, strawberries, cherries, the rose petal notes.
And this is a rosé. So what is the blend on this for your grapes?
So this is 72% Pinot Noir and 28% Chardonnay. So the Chardonnay still holds that beautiful backbone and the acidity, but then the Pinot Noir just fleshes it out with those lovely florals and the red fruits.
It is a lot of flowers, don't you think, Mark? There's a lot of
Rose petal city right here. It's a shame or Valentine's Day just passed us by, Thanksgiving too, but Valentine's Day passed us by. And that color, I mean, I'm not so much a romantic, but this is ridiculously beautiful, like translucent, glistening, pale pink right here. That's part of rosé bubbly's appreciation. You got to appreciate the color too.
Yeah, it is beautiful. I actually liked all three of these. I felt had unique color that was really differentiating. So so this is beautiful. I love this wine. So sorry, I kind of want to wrap up. I want to ask a couple of different questions. I want to ask about aging, and I want to ask about food pairing. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Let me first go through each of you just a little bit on your specific wine that we're talking about. How long would you age it, and what will happen? How will it evolve? So Hugh, do you want to start with that?
Great. Yeah. So on the aging potential, I really think there are literally decades, right? It may sound crazy because I know that so much sparkling wine doesn't carry vintage, and so sometimes we don't think about aging sparkling wine as we do with still wines, but we really do enjoy that. And so there are some styles that will age in contact with the yeast for 10, even on smaller quantities now, some 20 years. But with this bottle, honestly, I very recently had a 91 Blanc, 30 years old. It was lovely. You know, the vibrant acidity is still there, but just the kind of the notion of caramelization had just gone on and on and on. It was fun to taste. Now, I will be, with full disclosure, I love to taste old wines. You know, we have a cellar. We ought to pull out, 30 and 40-year-old red wines with some frequency. I get it, not everybody does, right? But for me, that's really exciting. And so but with that said, age for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell by that acidity in there. It is just so gorgeous. And like caramelized lemon, like you were saying, it like gets a little just bit
So
richer.
you'll see that, and eventually you'll get a few more of the savory characters, that start to evolve, these interesting seasoned salt notes and kind of nuttiness. At this stage in its life, it's pretty fresh, right? We're tasting it at 17, but it'll take on, and that's the idea. Set it up for long-term aging.
Yeah, and that's the idea, is that not everybody actually enjoys things as they age, but what will happen, and so that's
the most expensive.
Of
But when you think of the most expensive stunt doubles, right? We'll call the champagne stunt doubles. In this case, those guys, I mean, the Dom Perignon is 10 years old when you buy it, right? So it's already old, right? And then there's if you want the more expensive Dom Perignon, then you get the P2 and it's 20 years old. And if you want the really expensive Dom Perignon, then you get the P3 and it's 30. So there are those who love the notion of aging bubbles for a long time.
Yes.
Especially the English, they're mad about it.
Yeah.
British.
Yes. Well, they're a very old country, so that must be part of it. So, but Matteo, what about you with your Brut? What is your thoughts on holding this?
Trento DOC actually has a great aging potential. And, I agree with you in general, traditional method sparkling wine and Blanc de Blanc can age incredibly well. Obviously, as every wine, it will change, it will evolve. I personally like to age our Trento DOC after the Gauchemade or on the lees. Obviously, if you buy, for example, this Ferrari Brut and you keep it in your cellar, obviously, the first thing important is that you need to age it well, which means at a decent temperature. It's not too hot, not too warm, and mostly in a dark room. But in general, it has an incredible aging potential. You can age the non-vintage Ferrari Brut very well, but and we have our Ferrari Perlé, which are our vintage Ferrari that has even stronger aging potential. We propose it to the market after 5 years of aging on the lees in the cellar, and it can age many, many years afterwards after the Gauchemade. And our Giulio Ferrari Riserva del Fondatore that Mark mentioned before, actually we bring it to the market, after 10 years of aging on the lees. So in general, Trento DOC and our mountain Chardonnay, so our Chardonnay grown on the mountain, has this bright acidity that gives a very strong aging potential. And then obviously I'm also passionate about these long aging wines. I normally like to keep, when I go, I have a nice house in the mountain these days when I go up to ski. I like to keep there the bottles and drinking, after 2, 3, or even more years. And sometimes when I find some bottles who has been there for 10 or 20 years, I'm even happier. So it evolves as every wine, but that's the beauty of wine. It's a time machine that will tell you about time passing, and obviously the great of these wines is that they keep anyway this nice fresh acidity, this brightness, this drinkability, even after long aging. So you get the complexity, but without losing drinkability. This is what I call winning the challenge of time, maintaining this bright verticality, and at the same time acquiring, complexity, aging over time.
Isn't that what we're all trying to do for ourselves? I feel like that's a perfect example of my aging goal.
By the way, I'm going to remember that, winning the challenge of time. That's so
really
good.
Challenge of time, but gaining complexity. So we love that. We're
Yes.
all writing this down. Thank you. Jen, what about you with the Jansz Rosé?
I guess it's a similar theme with sparkling wines. That beautiful acidity, it contributes to the longevity of the wines. Whilst we release our wines when they are ready to drink, they're at that lovely fresh fruit-driven stage, and it really depends on the style that you like to drink. So if you want that lovely freshness, drink it now. If you love the increased complexities and changes into those secondary flavors of more aged wines, and the honeyed characters that come from time on cork, as opposed to time on yeast lees, then keep it for as many years as you like, really. Equally, like you suggested, we opened, it was a cuvee, 92, and still going so beautifully strong.
Yeah, it is a lot about personal preference as well. So to wrap up, I wanted to talk also about food pairing, because so many consumers, I think of sparkling wine as something for toasting and for celebrations and special occasions, which absolutely, I love a great sparkling wine for that, but it's a little bit of a disservice, I think, to sparkling wine's diversity, because to limit it to just those occasions, I think that you can enjoy it in so many other ways, especially with food. So I would love to kind of put to you how we might advise and encourage our consumers, those watching, to include these wines in their dining experience. So maybe, Mark, I'll start with you to kind of talk about maybe an overview of your advice on how to do bubbles in food.
Yeah, well, people sadly limit bubbly sometimes to birthdays and ball drops, as I say, but if you think about what we like throughout a meal, it's often something bubbly and not too heavy, because you like the lightness to pierce through the richness of a meal. So I think bubbly goes with everything. I'll drink a great bubbly, like all of these three, with a hamburger. I just will, because it cleans off the greases and oils on my tongue. The best pairing I've ever had in my life was rosé bubbly with spare ribs, which is kind of a cross-cultural match, but I would stand by that any day of the week. I tell people, though, if you really want to get the best out of bubbly, think of an egg roll, which is fun because we're all so multicultural these days in this globalized, internet-driven world. Think of an egg roll. It can be baked, it can be fried. It's Asian, meaning it could have soy sauce, or it can be spicy. All of these elements, and even though egg roll is not Japanese, you think of Asian food. All of these different elements go so well. Wine pros like you, Gwendolyn, and everyone here, all the winemakers, when we let our hair down, and by the way, I love the thought of Matteo, in his mountain house, drinking these older bottles. I want to see a video of that, Matteo. That would get a lot of views, because that's what people really want to see, the inside scoop. But anyway, it baked and fried and cleaning up your palate and giving you lift and making you happy. But the last thing I'll say is the light at the end of the tunnel that a lot of us feel right now, with COVID hopefully subsiding a little bit, the vaccine starting to work, the ultimate pairing to the light at the end of the tunnel are any of these three wines, or any really good bubbly. Because mark my words, you heard it here. I'm going to set a trend that bubbly like this is going to go. It's already popular, but it's going to go through the roof once the pandemic totally subsides. So that's the ultimate pairing with these sorts of things. As we're heading out, to celebrate the relief of being through the pandemic, you need bubbly like this.
You need bubbly like this. And friends, you pair this with people, right?
Yes.
That's the other thing we're missing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're missing people and friends. And I love this and you did one, Mark, on bubbles and potato chips. And I was like, oh, this is really great. I'm a truffle popcorn and bubbles, but then also through a meal is just a wonderful way to enjoy it. So Hugh, we have this incredible Blanc de Blanc with this just insanely amazing acidity, but again, that evolving palate. What do you like to eat with this?
Definitely oysters on the half shell, right? That's fairly popular in kind of the American dining scene. It seems as if we're starting to see more and more people really enjoy the style as well with Asian cuisine. So I thought that was a good remark Mark made there. Whether it be sushi, whether it be dumplings, there's a cleansing nature to the palate of all three of these wines, right? And brut sparkling wine is and the good news is it's becoming more popular. Despite the pandemic, I mean, we're starting to see more people really enjoy bubbles, and that's gone on over the last, I'd say, 20 years. So it can be more simple than that. People enjoy potato chips, maybe with a little creme fraiche and caviar on top, or with your most delicious chip all by itself. That can go well. I think salted things, fried things tend to align beautifully with this style. So there's I think a growing energy behind it that I would certainly highly recommend. But granted, I've been doing it my whole life. I've been tasting these wines. Before I leave, I did want to say I also want to do that trip to the Italian mountain house, Matteo. So we'll go and enjoy it.
We invited Matteo.
So yeah,
Invite us.
Don't be surprised if I come knocking on the door. There's the stranger from California.
Like, hey, how's the wine? Yeah.
I will ride on Mark's coattails to Tasmania as well, where I've never been. So let's go.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Totally.
This is pandemic style travel. We're virtually traveling to all these wonderful places. So thank you, Hugh. Matteo, what about you on this Ferrari Brut? It's a little bit richer. I think
first of all, thanks. You're all welcome, and I'm also looking forward to travel, and so coming to Tasmania, where I've never been before. So I look forward, and also to visit Schramsberg in California. And going to the pairing, I agree with Mark as well. These are food-friendly wines. All the bottled fermented sparkling wines, like the three wines we're tasting now, like our Ferrari Trento Doc. So they, bubbly goes with everything, as Mark said. If I have to say, since we are in Italian, metodo classico, then, why not? Let's talk about an Italian aperitivo. You can have a glass of this Ferrari Brut with some ham and mozzarella and some olives to have a nice Italian aperitivo just before starting your dinner. Or you can bring it on all over the dinner, perhaps even with a pasta. If you cook a carbonara, which has this egg and the pancetta, perhaps not with too much pepper, but this would balance very well. Anything fried, like in Italy, we do the fritto misto, like the fried calamari, would be perfect with this, Ferrari Trento Doc. And then, if I think about an Italian food that many, would love in the US, which is pizza. Why don't you try pizza? We call in Italy pizza and bollicine. Bollicine is bubble, and so you can pair, it's Ferrari Trento Doc with a nice pizza. Sometimes with the pizza margherita, I would also try the Ferrari Rosé. Rosé bottle fermented is nice with pizza. And then obviously, sushi, the caviar, these are the most, lobster would be more traditional. Again, the Mark mentioned about the roasted chicken or the fried chicken. That's again, beautiful. But, as I said, you can be very, very flexible in pairing, likely, because this is a wine that also enables you to change dishes. When you are eating some smaller tapas, some smaller dishes and different dishes, sparkling wine like this, like the three wines we're tasting tonight, are perfect because they are flexible in pairing.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the idea of let's encourage people to understand that this bottle can last you through your whole meal. I remember going to Champagne for the first time a while ago, but yeah, it was encouraged of no, you're drinking champagne your whole meal. And
yeah, we have a restaurant in the middle of our vineyards. So if you come and visit, we have a Michelin star restaurant where you have been. And actually, we always challenge the idea of creating a bollicine menu, which is a menu with different Ferrari all throughout the meal, pairing different dishes. And this has been a great way to experiment new pairings. So I hope you will join us and come and taste this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you.
Jen, what about this lovely rosé? What would be some of your favorite pairings for that?
So it's And like all sparkling wines, it's so diverse, and we've talked about the different stages of one meal, but also it can be any meal throughout the day, starting with champagne breakfast, brunch. So brunch, scrambled eggs on sourdough with cold smoked salmon. Here in Tasmania, the ocean is very much a part of our lifestyle and terroir. So we have a lot of lovely fresh seafood. So Tasmanian scallops, fried in butter and salt. The creaminess and the saltiness that both Hugh and Matteo discussed. But it can equally go well with dessert. So rather than choosing a sticky, you might want something a little fresher at the end of your meal. So have it with your fresh fruit or a poached quince tart. It is so versatile.
Yes, it's wonderful. I think you've just already sold Mark. I mean, he was already wanting to go to Tasmania. You're like, breakfast wine. It's like, yes, let's do it.
Hello, Qantas. Let's go. Although I'll have to quarantine for 14 days. I know from my wife, you Australians have figured out how to get rid of COVID, but you got to be severe. So, you know, it's a.
Well, if you could quarantine with some Jansz part, you'd probably be happy.
Yeah. You make that Jansz should be part of the quarantine program. It would make life a lot easier.
Well, I want to thank all of you so much for being here, for sharing your stories, the history of your wines, the wines themselves were all just fantastic. I mean, Mark, you had just great choices because this was just phenomenal wines, right? Are you right? You're right.
Very special.
Yeah. So thank you for your time, Mark. Thank you for your advice and commentary, which I always enjoy or whatever. So, and thank you, Hugh, Matteo, and Jen for joining us across the world and the continents and time zones.
Thanks to you. Thanks, Gwen. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Wine.com. And cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Salute.
Great
Salute.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously passionate about wine. Download our free app today.